Hello, everybody. You got just a tiny glimpse of me at the beginning of that. It's kind of the panic that comes on when you're literally diving in, getting a wash, quickly getting on the wireless, as we have done over the years, for more years than you can count, really. But thanks very much for being with me anyway, each and every one of you. Thank you kindly. The Blar, of course, is always looking over our shoulders and taking a grand look at what we got up to the week before. This week, we are inside. We have a special guest with us too. So get ready for hopefully a spectacular looking show tomorrow evening from 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock tomorrow, okay? Now, we put a bonus show out yesterday that I knew absolutely nothing about, but I took all of the flack for it, with people direct messages saying, well, what time are you starting? I didn't even know we were starting. This is Tony's idea. We rely on Tony to do all that all the technical stuff. So we got loads of people saying, what are you thinking of doing, putting a show on at this time? The match is on, don't you realize? Okay. And then somebody else said, because we put it on later, 9 o'clock, what are you doing putting it on this time of night? We got work to go on we kind of do right for doing wrong. But anyway, we gave you a bonus little show. We thought you'd be pleased. Now, even that caused a kerfuffle, because as I noticed looking back at all of the comments, Tony said, well, what show would you like? Loads of you selected shows that aren't ghost historian shows. You picked loads of shows that were my shows, either from radio or ones, well, all of them are on Robson's World right now. Pervalia, we got Sony Bean, we got Chillingham, and we've got a lot of Chillingham shows out there, a lot of them that aren't on YouTube as well. So, I mean, really stunning shows. The vast majority, in fact, 90%, closer to 95% of all of the shows on Robson's World have not been out on radio. That's the joy of it. They're all brand new, the vast majority, or stuff that we'd recorded to put on radio. And then we had something like 40 shows ready to go when we were told we weren't going to stay on the radio anymore. So therefore, we just literally took them away. Anyway, Seaton Sluice. Oh, I really enjoyed Seaton Sluice. I thought it was a great show. Let's just take a look at it. First of all, the apples, you know, the free apples that were on the side of one of the buildings. Catherine said, bloody lovely, an apple crumble. Not so nice to eat. They were not quite there yet. Many moons ago, I used to have an apple tree in one of the gardens that I had. And they were so sharp that it got to the point where I was just saying, let the creatures have them. And they all became black and infested and chowed by nature, which is all right. That's fine. That's what nature does. Jason says, up the sluice. And you. And Andrew says, miss you on the radio. And Maria said that too. And Darcy said that. I miss you so much. It's a new world. We're doing things differently. And I genuinely believe that what I'm doing now is actually better than what I did on the radio. And I was very proud of that. Very proud of you guys backing me up on the other side. A lot of the shows have callers in them, hundreds of callers in all directions in various shows. So something worth taking a look at, definitely. Elaine and David, epic sharers, the pair of you, both separately, but you share your socks off, and I do see what you do. So thank you kindly. Edwin, I hope you get your own radio station. Wouldn't want one now. Truly wouldn't want one now. First of all, nobody listens. And you see all of these figures saying that radio's got this massive curve and it's going up. It's about a 15th of what it was 10 years ago. So it's going up from nowhere to a little bit is the reality of it. And it'll never get more than that because they're playing the same tunes over and over again. That's their choice. Am I bitter about it? Bit. But it was their choice. They took everybody's chance to speak their mind off the radio. And that's never a good step, irrespective of my position. because I've had my time. I understand it. I'm comfortable with it. No sweat. I'm doing very cool stuff. I'm running around like a blue-bottomed fly, but I'm getting a kick out of pretty much all that I do now, which is good. Also, Robson's World, the Knights Templars. Oh, hang on a second. I've probably got a picture of the Knights. Oh, I can do actually a bit better than that. We put a show out this week, which is this one, the Knights Templar. Over the years, lots of people have said to me, Alan, the Knights Templar, was it true? I mean, Jesus' family and everything. What was it all about? Well, I've just put the truth of the Knights Templars. And there were lots of stories, and we've included them too. Everything you need to know about the Knights Templar is out this week. Stuart downloaded it, and he said this: downloaded your Knights Templar yesterday. What a brilliant listen. Thank you very much. I'm very happy that you feel that way. Speaking of all things Maltese, because I knew I'd be mentioning it, I just thought you might like to see. This is in Valletta in Malta. It's one of the bases, really, of the Knights Templar. And I mean, the buildings that they've got are incredible. Oh, that's not one. That is Seaton Delaval Hall. We were talking about that last week as well, but we weren't anywhere near it to show you it. But that is Seaton Delaval Hall. Let me go back and see if I can find some more of the... This is Malta. I beg your pardon. That one just interjected itself unnecessarily. Look at that. That's a staircase. They knew what they were doing, didn't they? This is another Seaton Delaval. Up the main drag. Back to Malta again. Malta International Airport. And that's across the bay from Salima, I believe. Then you've got some of the old buildings used by the Templars. You can see the little statue, and that's Building 5. And they do stuff like this over the bay so they could keep watch for their adversaries coming in. And there is Valletta Harbour, both sides of it, with their fortress on the end. And if ever we do anything to do with the Freemasons ever again, this was a Knights Templar icon, and it was literally taken up by the Freemasons. That one's in Malta. But pretty spectacular, pretty special. Now, Tess, is it Tess? Yes. Oh, yeah. Tess says, Alan, you mentioned last week, what is Ket? Some people didn't know. They went online and said, what's Ket? What's she talking about? Well, it's sweets and snacks and nibbles, I suppose you would call it. But you know where it comes from? You know, we're taking a look at Geordie words a little bit later, but it comes from the Viking word Ket, K-Y-E-T, waste foods, especially waste meat. In other words, food that's bad for you, because the Vikings wanted their men and their women to be strong and vigorous, and they told them not to eat Ket, anything that would be bad for them, give them a belly, make them unhealthy. So that's what Ket was. And when the Vikings conquered us and took us over, a lot of their words came into parlance. You'll see that later when we get into Geordieisms. Pat was worried about us, and so in Seaton Sluice said, wrap up, Alan, it's freezing. Or maybe she was just telling me to wrap up. I mean, that would be fair comment. David found another cemetery in Corbridge, and he said, this one may be worth a look. Haven't been in it, but next time I'm in the vicinity, I'll take a punt. Lee Maria sent me an image which made me smile. As you know, we're the ghost historian, and she found this online. The human historian. Well, in reality, there's literally probably millions of human historians in all directions, which is the thing that hopefully sets me apart, because we've got one foot on either side of life and death, haven't we? But that did make me smile. So nice shot. Thank you for that. And also, Alistair. Oh, Alistair's back. And he said, apologies for his speech being slurred. It's part and parcel of his condition. Remember, he's got Michael Parkinson's. And if he gets tired, you get a little bit slurry. There's no problem with that. As long as you can still walk and talk and sleep and eat and poo and all the things you need to do. That's the important thing. Don't ever stop. Keep doing the 3, as you know, you promised me that you would. And here is the man himself, the legend who is Alistair's Bit.
Hi, Alan. I did a bit of a mooch around Berwick because I didn't have the car, so I was on my feet. So I took a few photographs of unusual things. Some pictures are from a couple of weeks ago. And there's a couple not mine, but I put them in there anyway because they're nice. It's up to you whether you want to play them or not. I just thought it's better than nothing, as I say, I didn't have the car. But I hope you enjoy them anyway, if you do play them. See you later. Bye.
That final one was used in a famous Lowry painting, that bending wall. Lowry made a lot of paintings in and around Berwick. There is, in fact, a Lowry trail there if you're absolutely into your art. But anyway, Ali really enjoyed, fantastic show on Thursday, really enjoyed it immensely. Good. And well done with your bits and pieces. We love all of that. And don't forget, if you guys have bits and pieces, I did get sent something in by Sue, which was a video, and she said, is this a ghost? I'm not sure whether it is or it isn't, but we couldn't play it because it was a YouTube protected kind of thing, so we couldn't play it. But I don't know. It's an interesting look, and I don't know is the answer. Brian has been working at Newcastle United's training ground at Benton, and he says a lot of the lads have been chatting, saying there's a ghost of this and a ghost of that. What's the crack? Is it haunted? Well, we all know the ghost in St. James's Park, and there is one. But what about Darsley Park, which is what they call Newcastle's training facility in Benton? Originally, it was a civil service pitch, and many, many years ago, when I was working for Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food, I played on that football pitch. when it was a civil service ground, they did the annual inter-civil service match between the pension section and all the ones at Long Benton, plus MAF, Ministry of Agriculture, which has subsequently changed its name, and a lot of the other smaller civil service branches. And we got knocked out in the first round, but we tried our best. Then it became a pitch belonging to the Northern Gas Board as a kind of employees' sports facility. One of the original groundsmen, and here's the only ghost story I could find, the original groundsman of Darsley Park when it was a civil service pitch was a man called Arthur Bennett. He was already old when he got the job. He died of a heart attack whilst cutting down overgrown bushes that block the railway line from the pitches. And now they've got posh buildings there, but they didn't used to have. Just used to have a few small buildings where people could get changed. He was cutting down some of the bushes between the train lines, because the train whizzes straight past there, and also the training facility. And he died of a heart attack. And there's numerous ghost stories, numerous sightings of him. And according to the guys that you've been working with, Brian, Arthur's still at it, it seems. And he is an older man that you see walking fairly slowly across the grounds at Darsley Park. So there you go. Now, also, Helen downloaded Grisliest Celtic Ghosts, Phantoms of the Theatre, and Execution Dynasties. And she wrote, "That's me, sorted for tonight." Tonight, some of them are like 6 hours long. You've got a whole day and a half there. Probably enough to last you 2 or 3 hours every night, right across the week. But thank you very much for downloading them anyway. We appreciate it. Peter's our architect. The Lawrences, you know, that have that prisoner of war camp, their very own access to a prisoner of war camp, which is pretty cool. And he says he went to Eschwinning Woods and caught figures on the SLS that looked like children climbing trees, which is pretty cool. I've had a look at them, and they do look like children climbing trees. Gifts. Now, Sai watches the show every week and says he loves when we go off in a random direction. And the random direction was, he says, "What's the best and worst gift you've ever got?" That's actually quite difficult. I can tell you the worst ones easily. Best ones, I've been very lucky over the last 1,000 years, because when you work on the radio, all the record companies sent me vinyl, and then when it went to CD, they all sent me CDs free for decades. For somebody that loves the music as much as I do, that's just heaven. And you end up listening to things that you would never have heard had that not been the case. And then you try and persuade people to get into that music instead. A lot of local bands, we managed to get deals for a lot of local bands. We certainly gave a lot of airplay to, and there's nobody tragically doing that anymore. But gifts, worst gifts, a turd in a shoebox from people that didn't like me. Somebody that there was a nasty thing written on the door of the Little Chef on the way to Hexham, which is now not on the way to Hexham, might be on the way. No, it's on the way to Hexham. It's definitely on the way to Carlisle, but it was the one where the Starbucks is now. It used to be a Little Chef, and somebody wrote something disgusting, a filthy limerick about me on the door. And I said, if ever I go to the Little Chef, I'll definitely not go to the loo, so I don't have to look at it. Somebody broke into the Little Chef's toilets, unscrewed the door, and delivered it to the radio station. So I had to read it. And everybody in the radio station read it and thought it was hilarious. That was not a great gift. Didn't enjoy that. Being stabbed. Technically, it's giving you something. I didn't enjoy being stabbed. Didn't enjoy being attacked. Didn't enjoy getting my nose broken a lot. So there's a lot of stuff that has happened that did I deserve? Probably, you know. I've got a clacker and it keeps on going. However, worst gift of all time, weirdly, is none of them. because it came from somebody that I had a roadie that worked for me for years while I was doing a lot of live work all over the place. And one Christmas, I'd saved up a load of money to buy this guy something really, really nice and expensive. And I'd spent more money on a present for anybody on this guy because he'd worked really hard for me. And I said, I want you to have this. And I gave a lot of electronic gear, and his mind was blown. And Christmas came for me because I gave him that about 4 days before Christmas because I knew I wouldn't see him. And he said, oh, I'll drop your present off. And then middle of the night, Christmas Eve, ding dong on the door, go to the door, gives us a cuddle. Merry Christmas. This is for you. Box about so far. I was just excited because I've got everything that I need. So I don't need anything now. But back then I loved presents because you do. And when I opened it up on Christmas morning, it was a pink hoodie with a bunny rabbit on the front. And at first I thought, well, this is a joke because he knows I would never wear anything remotely like that. And it wasn't a joke. That was his present. And forget cost. A nice note would have done me. I know mothers say that to their bairns, don't they? Hey, just a nice card. Something from the heart means more than stuff. But what the was that? Do you know what I mean? Random. Anyway, right. Because you asked, Si, about gifts, I went looking for gifts. Now, we all know that Vincent van Gogh cut his ear off and gave it to a prostitute. Okay, random bad gift. Got some others. The Sultan of Morocco sent his bowel movements to the ladies of his court as a favor, as a tribute, as a thank you for all they did for him. And it was supposed to be like amazing and incredible. Oh, I'll save this turd forever. What? The Pope sent the Queen Isabel of Spain the embalmed corpse, the dead body of Saint Felix, as a birthday present. I bet she reacted exactly the same way I did with that pink bunny rabbit jumper. Also, King Edward VII, our king, had a golf bag sent to him by an Indian Maharaja. It was made totally out of an elephant's penis. When I heard that, now I know how big elephants are, but to get a full set of golf clubs, and I presume they put the balls in the sack, I'm guessing, But anyway, I was impressed by that. Warriors of the cannibal tribe called the Cubios gave their wives the penis and balls of defeated enemies, and the women had to eat them because it helped with their fertility. It's what they told them. Probably they were going, no, you've got to eat them. Also, Ecuadorian cannibals, more cannibals, left their own bodies, when they died, they left their own bodies in a will to their families and told which family members to eat which bit. You can have me leg, you can have me thigh, you can have me. Told them what bits to eat. And so I just thought I'd chuck in a few weird things because we do weird, don't we? Shirley asks, have you ever visited the Amityville house? Yeah. One of the great disappointments. You go there with all of the hype and all of the story, and the more you talk to the people that live there and the people around there, and even some of the people literally willing to show you around and give you a tour, they all say it was all hype and a good 95% of it didn't happen. But it made a great story and it made the family a bit of money and da-di-da-di-da. Deflating. But as we've always said, you certainly don't get a coconut every swing. And Rachel says, thanks to Alan for, Rachel wanted to get married. She's a pagan. And for a long while, because I've been flying around, I've not been able to spend any time doing that kind of stuff. I've got a couple of exorcisms that people want doing, but I literally am not about to be able to do them. But I did have literally 2 hours, 30 minutes spare. And I managed to get to their ceremony, carried out a pagan blessing, and they were married. And Rachel says, it was the best. My family were thrilled. Gav and I could not have had a better start. Well, congratulations to the pair of you anyway. Super. And Tash, download. I have to give, if we had medals on the show, Tash, I would get a medal. She downloaded Robson's World's Phantoms of the Theatre. Now that's 7.5 hours long, right? That's a working day's worth. And she said she was just going to put on a couple of hours before she went to sleep. And then she sent me this message at 20 minutes past 5 in the morning saying how great it was. She said she just couldn't stop listening till she got right to the very end. So I literally take my hat off to you, because I'm not even sure I could manage that, but that's amazing. Well done. Also, another Robson's World this week, which has got a bit of a story behind it. Bear with me a second while I find it. Oh, there it is. And this is the cover for it, Robson's World. The tomb of 6 million dead, 6 million corpses, skeletons beneath the streets of Paris. A brand new show. I know we've covered the subject once before. This is going back, a pre-visit. And also, we managed to find a show from long ago that had only been out on radio once years ago when we went down. And that has been included as part of this. You also find out who the real Scarlet Pimpernel was, discover a bit about the Reign of Terror. And on the back of this, I decided I would grab you some pictures of the ossuary of the actual place itself. First of all, there's this guy. This is how the public get in. There are two other entrances that are used by ghosty touring groups, the catacombs of Paris. So that's how you get into it. And this is kind of what that tour is like. Stuff like this that you see as you're traveling by. The ossuary. But to be allowed down there by a ghost hunting group completely on your own, I was lucky enough to do that. And I tell you, it's got stuff going for it. No question. Do you see how they've made like a skull cross in the middle of all of those leg bones and knee bones? This is one of the ancient books that list all of the bodies that are in there. The whole thing's stunning. And a sword in a stone. It's not the sword in the stone, but it's nice set dressing, I think you would call it. So there you go. We've covered the worst gifts. Got another couple here. Lord Erskine sent his real testicles, his actual testicles, to the Bank of Scotland because he was going bankrupt. And he asked the Bank of Scotland, can you give me a loan just to get me through this rough, bumpy period? And they said, no, we can't take the risk with you. So when he died, he sent them his testicles because the bank had no balls. How about that? So that's that. Karen mentioned the word scalped. And we're going to get into that because we're going to do Geordie bits and bobs. But we've had a few photos and pictures sent in from you guys too. Let's have a look at some of them. This one came in from Adam. And this is, at first I thought, is that the Central Station back in the day? But it isn't, because as you see the sign Shakespeare Street, this is next to the Theatre Royal. That is, in fact, the Theatre Royal. But it's the sign that he points out on the right-hand side. Experienced workers sent out. There was some kind of employment office of some kind there. I just find it fascinating because you can see buildings behind where Gray's Monument is now, and one is Nestle's, which is interesting. And you see the carriages going down the street and the old gas lamps. Just amazing shots. So we've got a few of those. Also, yeah, I'm going to do one or two picks that, again, you guys have sent in, and one or two that I've added to the ones that you've sent in. This shot said, Alan, this is for you because it's got one of your relatives on it. And it does. The guy driving the carriage, the royal carriage, and they said these are the first people ever to ride across the Tyne Bridge. And obviously it was the royals. And my great-grandfather was the man who was driving the carriage. So he wasn't posh or anything. He was the poor guy. Got a few photos here too that I think you might just like, including this one. Picture of the theatre back in the day. Got some great shots as well here. Here's another one. The back streets of Newcastle upon Tyne. When we did wear flat caps, even some of the lasses. About that. When I was growing up, this is kind of what the West End was like, just rows and rows of loads of terraced houses. And a railway line every now and then passing through that was smoky and full of steam. Wonder how many of you go back quite that far. This is an amazing picture. The day after Hitler invaded Poland, and that meant that we were going to war as well. I will give the Poles a lesson, says Hitler. And he did. Damn him. This is one of Tutankhamun's chairs and beds, little beds, when he was just a baba. Because he was only a child when he died, so this must have been when he was younger, I'm guessing. Wonder if you know what this is, everybody. This is the world's first dishwasher. And all it is, a tap with a hose pipe pushed into it. So it just fills the thing with water and drains it off. And if you had a hose, you know, because sometimes when I was little, I remember people used to put little rubber hoses on the end of their taps so they could point the water where they wanted it. That's as good as the dishwasher. From time to time, we've also mentioned that in some of the temples in Egypt and some of the temples in South America, they link all of their stones together in a way that would have been impossible to physically carve stones out to fit them. And this is a prime example of it. So if they haven't been carved out by hand, how were they carved out? To this day, people are not terribly sure. I'll give you 4 more shots and then we'll get to all of our Jodyisms as well. Who do you think this is? Cleopatra. Who is it? Now, I love my movies, and if you do too, you should know who this is. One of our greatest actresses ever. This is Helen Mirren. When she was young, she was a bit of a goer, we're aware of, and also a bit of a vamp. Look at that. I think that's impressive. Way to go, Helen. And then we've got this. This is really kind of sad. The lady on the right is Marie Curie. Now, she discovered all things radioactive, and she died of radiation poisoning, but she won the Nobel Prize. The man sitting next to her is her husband, who won a Nobel Prize. Sitting on their lap is their daughter, who won a Nobel Prize. And I'm not sure there's any other family that could ever say that in the history of the world, which is pretty cool. Now, because I like my music growing up, I always kept my eye open for really cool looking sound systems. Here's one from the 1950s and 1960s. I think it's early 60. How cool is that? 2 speakers and the actual radio. It wasn't a record player, it was just a radio, but radio was so important. And if you look on the front of it, you can see You could get Germany, you could get South America, you could get America, you could tune into stations all over the world. And they came up with digital radio, DAB, which is crap. If ever you drive out of a signal area, you lose it altogether, and it just says no signal. Well, that's no good. These suckers, how can you listen all over the world in 1960, but in 2025 you can't? I don't understand it, and I just think there's a rabbit off somewhere. And the last pick for now, got a few more for later. My last pick for now is this. And it's about music again. Now, if you're a football fan, especially if you go back a bit, you might recognize the man driving the car. And the car is an American vehicle. You will see he's got a single vinyl 7-inch with the centerpiece missing. They used to do that when they placed them on jukeboxes. The footballers, Mike Summerby, used to play for Manchester City. He was a winger. I think he played for England as well. And he got one of the very first cars that could play vinyl. How cool is that? I'm just sliding this in the same way we would slide in a CD. But this was 1965. 1965, for heaven's sake. That is awesome. Still, back to our doings here. I promised you the Geordieism, and Karen, while we were out in the Seaton Sluice, she mentioned that I'd used the phrase scalped. I would get scalped. I think it was actually something that Bushy had said. Scalped. And she said, what a great Northeast expression. I was always threatened as a nipper with getting my arse scalped. So let's get into this week's Geordie Mackem smoggy words and what they mean, because we've got to keep our language, and it is war language, we've got to keep it alive. Scalped. It's another Viking word. It's mixed with Middle English, but the word that the Vikings used was a thing called skelpin. Skelpin. Why? Because skelpin, it sounds like a slapping. Skelping. The Scottish word scalpers. Now, if that means slap, skelpin, I was scalped round the lug, our language. The Scottish have the word scalpers, or used to have. It's not so much in parlance now, because it's been replaced with slappers. Women who were common and aggressive. Scalpers. Watch her, she's a bit of a scalper. Watch her, she's a bit of a slapper. But I mean, not a slapper in dropping the pantaloonies, aggressive. Someone that's likely to hit you. I got another one. There was a woman down our back lane. Her name was Mrs. Robinson. She wore a little beret. Even when she was in the house, she always wore this beret. And she would come out every time we were playing football in the back lane. This is a time when there was very few cars. And play up beside your own door. She was always watching every single thing we ever did. And if we kicked the ball over somebody's backyard, we then had to climb for it, nip down, grab it, chuck it over the wall, and climb back quickly before anybody came out. And that's what we did. But Mrs. Robinson would always see it, and she would come out and say, sorry, I'm going to tell Mrs. Curtis, and all this kind of stuff. She is the epitome of a reet nebby nout, a phrase that means a really incredibly nosy person. A reet nebby nout. In Scottish, Irish, and Celtic English, a neb was a nose. A neb, a nose or a beak. How about that? Nosy. Nout. Now you'd think, well, nout's from nothing. It's a stretch, but you get there. It's not. It's from no ought. N-O, separate word, ought. In other words, you shouldn't do it. No ought. It's where the word naught comes from. No ought. Naught. You nebby nout. In other words, you really knows even you shouldn't do it. You nebby no ought. Get it? But we ended up with nebby nouts, and it sounds better, doesn't it? War marrow's knackered. our friend is tired or weary. War comes from the Viking word var, hour. Knackered. A knacker is a man who works on worn-out animals, taking old horses to the boneyard, killing them, using their bones for glue, skinning them, meat and dog food and fertilizer. That's the name of the profession, the knacker. And because of the job they were doing, they were always tired 24/7. And it's come to mean dead tired, because they always were really tired, because it was a poor profession and they had to do a lot of animals every day just to make ends meet. So war mara, our mara, is Old Norse. For a Viking word for a friend is a maga, marg with an R on the end, marger. Are you coming with me, marger? Mara. That's where it comes from. Vikings. You see, we've got an awful lot. If you do those checks, you know, when you go back into your family and you give them a bit of blood, or you hockle, there's a word, you spit into a little thing and you send it off. It nearly always comes back with Scottish, Scandinavian, because that's who we're from. We got a little bit of French, thanks to William the Conqueror. Now he's Charlie's. The next one is getting howked. Now, if I did something wrong, my dad would howk me, no question about it. But the word howked actually, back in the day, meant scratched. It's Germanic. And it came from hollowed out. That's what it meant. Hollowed out, like if you scratch something and you're knocking the surface off it, scratching at it. Yeah, hollowing it out. And that's where howked apparently came from, to be picked or scratched. In Scotland, they still go, sorry, let me speak properly. They still gan tatty howken. They still go scratching out the potatoes. Tatty howken in Scotland. It's a time of year, obviously, when they're collecting in the crops. Tatty howken, still happening right now. And there's a phrase that I've never used in my life. I've used the word cuddy as horse or similar type creature, but I've never used the word wifter, and I didn't know where it came from. So when I was looking and I just came across, oh, he's just a cuddy wifter. You think, are you trying to disparage somebody? Yeah, kind of. First of all, a cuddy is a Northumbrian term for a donkey or a pit pony, you know, the smaller version of horses. And a wifter is the driver of a donkey or a pit pony driving a cuddy with a cart behind you, when the cuddy keeps going off to the left. And for some reason, when you put a yoke, when you put the gear over the neck of the horse, it had a tendency to go left. And the more left they went, they called them, oh, he's a right cuddy wifter. Can't even keep it going straight. But for some reason, donkeys and pit ponies had a tendency to go left. No idea why. I've tried looking it up. Nobody seems to know. Right, let's have another one. Put your Gansy on. We're gan nut. We're gan doing the tune. Put your best Gansy on. Now, I presume Gansy just means your best outfit, doesn't it? I'm guessing. And it's a Norse Viking word for yarn, something that's been put together, that's been woven, that's been weaved. The word for yarn is gensa. There's another one, garn, but gensa is the main one for an outfit that you would wear on your top, a gensa. And it means sweater or heavy warm clothes. And you would imagine the Vikings, before a mother would let their son get on a Viking longship to come to the northeast to rape and pillage, make sure you have your gensa on. Put your gensa on, otherwise you'll be frozen. Frozen. Viking. There you go. And Bobby Dazzler. Is it about the police? Dazzler? Kind of. It was originally, I know we use it for somebody who's extra special. He was a Bobby Dazzler. She was a Bobby Dazzler. The band were a bunch of Bobby Dazzlers. Oh, he played football last night against Liverpool. And they played with great pride. They were Bobby Dazzlers. It's a criminal expression for thieves or confidence tricksters, people that con other people, pulling the wool over the eyes of policemen. Some people that did con tricks would keep the story even when the police stopped them and get the police to believe their lies. Look, I tell you what, we'll sort all this out tomorrow. I'll bring all the documentation. We'll meet here at 1 and we'll sort the whole thing out. And the policeman would go, oh, okay. And off they'd go and they'd never be seen again because they were thieves. And people that did that dazzled the policeman. Bobbies, named after Sir Robert Peel, who was the head of the police commission back in the day. So the police at the time were either called Peelers, Sir Robert Peel, or Roberts, Bobbies. And that's where the whole thing comes from. They dazzled Bobbies by being sneaky as hell. This one is quite nice. Michelle writes, you told us that you worked in Paris at the Black Cat, Chat Noir. And I got 2 3-month contracts from my agent who worked down the bottom of the big market in Newcastle at the time. And she says, just where was it? It was at the Pigalle. Now, I've got no modern, certainly none of the photographs from the time when I was working there, because it was late 70s, mid to late 70s. And but I did manage to find some really old pictures. Now, if you go to Paris anywhere, you'll see the old posters because it used to be one of the clubs back in the day. If you've ever seen this before, the Chat Noir. You see this on tea towels, on cups, on mugs, postcards, and the like. And I do have a few shots. I think that's one of them. That's the Moulin Rouge back in the day. I mean, really way back before it got hugely sophisticated. And I managed just to find 1 or 2 shots. Now, forgive me if I get the wrong ones here. That is inside. That's actually was the bar area. There was a massive dance room as well, which is like 5 times that. But that was the bar back in the day of the Chat Noir in the late 1800s. And that's what it looked like. It almost has the Cooperage kind of look, doesn't it? The Caveau du Chat Noir. And that's a woman cleaning the owner of the Chat Noir's house. Then you'd get great posters, stuff like this, the Chat Noir. And then just got a few more modern shots. This is the street where I lived for the 6 months. First week I was in the Hotel Pretty on the south side of the river, and I had to walk miles to get there to the club. But this is literally just round the corner from where the Chat Noir was. The building on the left-hand side, I was on the 3rd floor, and every other room in that building at the time was a lady selling her body. And in the early hours of the morning, it was almost as if there was an earthquake. There was so much vibration in the building. That is a modern depiction of that same thing that we saw before, of the Moulin Rouge. If you've seen the film, you know a bit about it. This is one of the streets in Pigalle late at night. There is a lady selling her services to somebody in a car halfway down there. And that still happens. There's a massive kind of binary area in the middle of Pigalle these days. And this is where the Chat Noir used to be. It's now a sexy club, La Diva, where you get naked women weaving their bits and pieces about. And that's actually quite sad because the Chat Noir was spectacular back in the day. Ian P., he said, Alan, before the blah, I'm going to go and visit Seaton Sluice. And he says, anything he gets, he will be more than happy to share with us. And he says, great show last week. Can't wait for the next blah. Thanks for being with us. Now, because you said that, I decided I would do something a little bit different. Seaton Sluice, we were talking about, you know, those young lads that died in the salt hopper, the place where they collected salt. When you see Seaton Sluice today, it looks very, very different indeed. So I've got a few shots of Seaton Sluice. That's Seaton Sluice from a drone, and you can see the river going down to the sea. You can see the bridge at the end. You can see at the very top left, you can see Rocky Island. You can see all of the boats where the widow borrowed the boats to go out to sea. Got a few shots of other things too. That is Rocky Island. Doesn't look quite like that now. It doesn't look much different. You've got this, and do you know when I told you that a guy ran down to the side of the cliffs and jumped onto a boat that was foundering? They ended up making steps where he did that, and these are the steps that they carved out, and you can see it goes right the way down to the sea. The idea was that if ships did get into trouble and they found their way into the edge of the port, that somebody could literally throw a rope to the side and they could run up, tie it round a rock and save their lives. This is Seaton Sluice. It is from the river where we started the show yesterday, and you can see that on that bank, they're burying bodies of people that had been lost at sea. And there were so many that they put graves for the important people, and for all of the others that had died, they're digging pits too, and they're carrying them in on horses and carts. And then you've got, this might be Malta. No, that's Seaton Sluice, where they're standing on one of the bridges and reading prayers for some more people that died. And because they were seamen, they decided they were not going to bury them on land. They were going to bury them in the sea at high tide by dropping coffins into the sea. Wow. Some of the markings down on the shore where buildings and switch gear were that helped the sluice open and close. This is from the beach at Seaton Sluice, looking out towards St. Mary's Lighthouse. If ever you've seen pictures of Hawaii and thought, oh, I wish I could go there, we've got more glories on our doorstep than you can chuck a stick at. But the images that we have, this is the one I wanted to show you more than anything. This was Seaton Sluice back in the day. And you know, when we were pointing across the river and saying there were buildings where you would keep salt, and inside each one there were hoppers. Sometimes the hoppers were outside getting ready to be carted. Well, you can see, if you look at the walkway, you can see a horse and cart coming from a boat going up onto the bridge over the small burn. And you can see a couple of buildings at the bottom that were places that would receive the hoppers. Some of the hoppers, the larger ones, were outside. And there are the big salt pans. Each one of those huge, they look like chimneys spitting out smoke, drying off the salt. Salt being such an expensive commodity. So when we say we're here in Seaton Sluice and it hasn't changed over the centuries, it absolutely has. Look at how it looked back then. And when I'm trying to paint a picture of what it looked like, I don't really think you had that in your mind. I know that I certainly didn't. But how cool a set of shots are they? Stunning, absolutely stunning. So, Ian P, I hope you got some great shots. Send them in. Sue sent me a video. Can't play it because it's somebody else's file. John says, hi, Alan. You are truly the king of weird. Thank you very much. So what is the strangest thing that anybody ever told you? You're coming up with random questions this week. The weirdest thing that anybody told me, when somebody says something that you go, what? I was interviewing Gloria Gaynor. First I was afraid, I was sat, here, I will survive. Never will say goodbye. I am what I am. A binary finery anthem, no less. Gloria Gaynor, I was chatting to her, and halfway through the interview, she said, I was talking about ghosts. Have you ever seen a ghost, by any chance? She said, no, I've never seen a ghost, but I have been to heaven. And then she told me the whole story of how she went to heaven. And it's like, you just chins on your chest because it's the very last thing you expected. I've got an icky one, if I can share an icky one with you. The icky one was when I worked for a year and a half for 20th Century Fox, and we were doing the telly shows, and I was doing voiceovers on some of their old shows for the British market, and the American market had a American voiceover. So I was doing a lot of cross-pollination and going out, traveling the world, doing ghost shows with them while doing Night Owls on the same day, 2 shows in a day. And we were out at a restaurant. I can tell you the part of the world we were in. We were in a restaurant in New Orleans, and people were just chatting. And this guy was at the top of the table, somebody I got to know really well, stayed at his house on a couple of occasions. He lives in the Hollywood Hills, and he's he was the vice president of the Fox Family TV channel. Not going to give his name because he hasn't given me permission to share the story, but I will. He said that he was doing a documentary and he needed to go and visit Hugh Hefner at the Playboy Mansion. And he'd been invited to a couple of parties there, like highfalutin executives always were, and the women would look after the men. He was happily married. He said he didn't want to go there unless he was with a team of people with him to get things signed and get the hell out of there. That was his words. And he said he saw the most disgusting thing he's ever seen. In the Playboy Mansion, they've got a number of swimming pools. The main swimming pool that has access to these personal lounges. So in other words, you get your swimmies on, you go into the pool, hook up with a girl who's paid to look after you, and then you take her out of the pool into one of these private areas, or you do what you want to do to the lady in the pool. And apparently this was one of the things that lots of people all evening were doing in the pool. And this guy said, not just to me, but to 2 or 3 other people at the top end of the table, he said, one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen was they've got staff that go into the pool first thing every morning, scooping the sperm off the top of the water. I'm not a good swimmer. I swallow water when I'm trying. Oh, not going in that one. Not at all. Anyway, let's have a quick razzle down all of these messages. Oh, yeah, got lots of thumbs up. Yeah, Lee Maria told everybody earlier on, make sure you give thumbs up because they count the thumbs up apparently. Yeah. I don't know who does it, but there'll be somebody somewhere. You need to get my mate Bobby Thompson down. He does great stuff in a Geordie dialect. And I know Bobby, he's a good lad. He's solid. I'm warming up that amazing steak pie that you made me. Can't get enough of it. That's special. Could do a one tonight. And also, Lee Maria, visiting the Paris catacombs. It was announced that you would be searched to make sure you hadn't taken anything. Imagine that anybody would want to take a human skull. You'd be surprised. You would absolutely be surprised. A lot of those things, the ossuary, the Bone Cathedral in Kutna Hora, 50 miles north of Prague, exactly the same there. They're watching you like a hawk because people do want that kind of stuff. Alan, can you remember the spirit from last night that said you had met sometime in the past? Absolutely. No, absolutely. Yeah, the guy from that shopping center. Yeah, absolutely. I remember the story, and I remember people sending me photographs, and I know I would have spoken to him because I spoke to like the boss of the Metros and all the big shopping centers, the Kiel Row, all the shopping centers around the north. I've schmoozed with the people who ran them, but it didn't lodge. So no disrespect to the person, but there you go. It just didn't stick in. And then everybody's just talking with one another. So that's happy days. No problems there. Right, Chaz, if everyone tried a Robson's World show, they would be totally hooked, says Chaz. Thank you very much. I think so too. And a few more pictures, and then we'll give you some clues as to where we're going tomorrow. We haven't got a whole load of pictures because I've given you one or two already, but we do have another dozen or so, so let's get to it. I just put this in because all over the world around the same time, those big ghetto blasters that the guy's carrying, I don't remember anybody wearing those glasses, but I do remember those ghetto blasters. They became the thing, and everybody would put their cassette in, those Now cassettes. Now number one. It was probably number one or number two back in those days. Now, when we were in Seaton Sluice, you noticed that a lot of the streets were fairly narrow, and this is how people got their boats down to the sea. Sometimes they'd put them on carts and literally have to pull them on ropes to get them down to the sea. This is quite cool. Before there were mobile phones, a company called Bell used to drive vans around and just park them up, and people could go and ring home at a time when you only had like 3 people's phone numbers because not everybody had a telephone. Now, we have often mentioned the royal family, and we mention that they are inbred. And I don't mean this is insulting to any of them. It just happens to be a fact. And let me prove it. This is the English king, King George, and this is Tsar Nicholas of Russia. You telling me that they don't come from the same seed? The Tsar of Russia and the King of England, they were cousins. And I think they could make it for twins, you reckon? What about this? An English fascist on the right-hand side, Oswald Mosley, next to Mussolini, Il Duce, who ended up with his girlfriend being shot numerous times and hanged upside down from a lamppost. And he deserved it. This is just a really cool picture. This is Led Zeppelin. Now, they look like they're in the front room of, you see the fireplace there. They're on their private jet. Their private jet didn't have seats like aeroplanes should. Just had cushions and chaiselongs and stuff. How cool is that? I presume that you can see the other 3, but I presume John Bonham's flying the plane. He did a bit of flying without planes, usually. This is, when you get your NutriBullet and you want to mix up a shake of something green that looks like snot, but is said to do you good. Hollywood McShane uses a NutriBullet. Well, this is the old-fashioned one. You had to grind it up by spinning the wheel. Now, this is on, I think it's Sunset and Vine in Los Angeles. Now, if you go there now, there is a very similar shaped building, but with modern sports cars and modern car. I mean, not as old as that. Some from the 50s, 60s, and 70s to make it look like something out of Greece, but it's still there to this day. I just picked this shot up because it's a very, 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 very young Metallica. And I know not all of you are into rock music, but when I first interviewed Metallica, that's what they looked like. It's just hard to believe when you see them today. This is, have you ever seen when you're driving around the north of England, you've probably seen Red Bull cars with a big can of Red Bull on the roof. And if you stop them, they usually give you a can of Red Bull, which is very nice because it's dear. Coca-Cola used to market their drink by traveling around neighborhoods, and everybody would stop and would be allowed to get a free Coca-Cola in little cups, little paper cups. And if you go to one of the Disney parks, I think it's Epcot, in their freezer zone, they do the same thing now. They've got different Coca-Cola brands from around the world, including their famous pineapple Fanta from Argentina, and it's stunning. And you can only get little free samples in a paper cup. For those of you that love your records, your vinyl, I just saw this and I thought, I've got to show them that, because you'd go into a shop like that and you would be there hours, just going through the albums, reading the notes, looking at the inside sleeve, something tactile, something that meant a bit more than just music. And it wasn't, it was the whole package, wasn't it? And if you're into your computers, and I've never particularly been, not in gaming, Atari was one of the first ones, and they would put these into shopping centers. An Atari home computer demonstration center. So you could come in and have a go, want one, and then drive your family wild until you physically got your hands on one. This was just, you got delivery drivers now that do a hard job. This was a postman back in the day. Apparently, in America, the newspaper boys didn't deliver magazines. The post office had to do it. And as you can see, it packed the moot. There's another northern expression. This is weird. 2 football teams giving a Nazi Heil Hitler, a Nazi salute. Who are the teams? Germany's on the right. England are on the left in the 1930s. How about that? Saluting Hitler in Germany. Did not do that again. And whenever, and I've been lucky to do outside broadcasts all over the place, and nowadays I can go there with a very, very small piece of kit, or similar kit to what we use when we do the ghost hunts. Little clip-on mics and one-hand mic being recorded into a device, and then when you play it back, it's as loud as anything. If you did a live appearance back then, and we're talking late 1800s into the 1900s, this is the gear you had to take with you. And I just think that's amazing. Amazing. Instead of massive speakers and woofers and all the gear that you have to take out if you really want to be heard these days. That is just an incredible shot. And the very last one is this. And a lot of people say that there's a very, very rich family who is at the head of all things new world, the new world order. Sitting in the back of that car is that family. And looking at it, can you really believe that they created the modern day version of the Illuminati that's still out there, running the world? It's a big ask looking at them, mind, isn't it? But you never know. And that's it. That's our look at the world. And all I've got left for you tonight is 8 o'clock tomorrow night, if you would be so kind, for our rough mix. The clues are we're going to Seagull City. We're going to Seagull City. And the second clue is a bloke who's a canny builder. Okay? Seagull City and the bloke who's a canny builder. 2 clues. Where are we tomorrow night? That's all you're getting. Seagull City and a bloke who's a canny builder. See if you can work it out from there. And until tomorrow night, thanks for being with me. I hope you've enjoyed our blah tonight. And until tomorrow at 8 o'clock, good night, God bless you, and I wish you well. Bye, everybody. Thanks for being with me. Night.